tapping on the podium, if I did that or not. But then I also remember the microphone.
You look surprised.
Did I? No way. I remember every time I said Public Works, like
waiting for
the microphone would.
Nope, you look great.
We'll call the meeting to order. Mayor DeLong is not here. I think it's the first meeting he's missed in 6 years. So I'm acting Mayor Pro Tem, and we are ready to get started.
Want me to call the roll? Councilmember Roberts?
Here.
Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
Councilmember Graves is absent. Councilmember Saper?
Here.
Councilmember Toll? Here. Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Here.
We have Councilman Clark lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second. Oh.
Councilman Stokes? Yes. Crystal, we're going to pull number 9. We have a motion and a second.
Who made the motion and second?
I made the motion. Do I need to move to approve the amended, or is
Yeah.
it fine? Okay,
That
move
would-
to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. We have comments from the public. Seeing no one, we will move on. Our first item is number 9.
No, we need to approve the consent agenda.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Okay, it's approved.
Number 9, budget amendment for employee retention for represented employees, resolution number 23-015.
Councilman Stokes?
Yeah, I was approached and asked if there would be any possibility to increase this just a couple hundred to account for taxes so that they're actually receiving $2,000 rather than a little bit less. So if I did my math right, if we gave them $2,200, it would be $204,000. And if we did $2,300 to account for taxes, it would be $213,900. Just putting that out there to be my due diligence.
Councilman Smith?
And I can certainly appreciate that thought. Typically, bonuses aren't grossed up, though. This would be like paid as a retention kind of bonus, or no?
This would run through the city's ADP process, so there would be tax withholdings. Because it's not a bonus. Government employees are not allowed to have bonuses.
Not
This is
bonus.
a retention program. So
Okay,
it actually run through our general payroll, so regular withholdings would apply.
Okay, yeah. So it would be the 2,000 minus the withholdings.
Correct. Anywhere between 200 and 500 depends on how that family makes their remittances on IRS.
Which would be how, I don't know, we can't call it a bonus, we call it something else. That's
It's a
how it-
retention program, right?
That's how these would typically be handled, correct? There wouldn't usually be a grossing up to make it an actual $2,000.
So the way that this is drafted right now, it's $2,000 per employee. It does not compensate for any tax withholding. So it would then be minus whatever their tax withholding would be.
Right. I think that was how I understood it when we discussed it last week. I can appreciate the ask.
Councilman Saper?
Yeah, in order to be fair, every employee's tax liability actually will be different depending on family size and deductions and everything else involved. So if we raised it to cover what we think would be an average tax, we'd miss some people. It doesn't make sense. So we should just go along, I think, with the 2,000, leave it at that.
I would move to approve it.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 10, out of title compensation.
Casey?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Attached was the memo that Mike Nichols appointed Kim Nakahoto as the acting city administrator until he can return to full-time back into the office. According to our personnel manual policy, when somebody upgrades into a role, they get a 5% upgrade pay for the time that they fulfill that role. And Mayor DeLong wanted the council to actually approve that without putting it on the consent agenda, so you guys could approve that. Questions?
Councilman Roberts?
Move to approve. Second.
I have one question, Casey. How it was worded, and I know that it's a position, when I think of it as a position that was one level up, it makes total sense. But for people that don't know at home, the city administrator position did not get the same bump that other positions did because that goes through council, correct?
Correct.
So the current assistant city administrator actually makes more than the current city administrator, correct?
I believe so.
So to match, that next level up is actually a step down. which
Well,
is-
we typically just do a 5%. When they fulfill it for a short period of time, it's just 5% for the time they fill it.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you. We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Moving on.
Item 11, auditor's presentation of fiscal year 2021-2022 financial statements.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Nick Hawkins with administration. Tonight we have Chester Moyer with Reuben Brown, who's been our audit partner for the last 4 years. This is actually their final year with us. We have an RFP out for audit services right now. He's going to walk through the financial statements for fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. As Nick said, my name is Chester Moyer, and I'm the person responsible for signing off on the audit of the city's financial statements. And it's not just me. There were about 10 people that worked with me on this audit, working closely with the management team here to prepare the financial information. The final financial statement is about 135 pages long in its totality, so it's quite a bit of work. And something that you should be proud of, your management team pulling all of that together. So I have a document here that summarizes my required communications to you. So we work closely with management during the course of our audit, but we are working for you on behalf of the citizens and constituents of the city. And I'm going to highlight some things from this summary of my required communications to you. So there's a lot of text on here. I'm just kind of moving through the document. If you want to follow along, you kind of, on your own document, you know where I am. But this is a draft right now. We plan to issue the financial statement tomorrow, pending any changes that might happen as a result of this conversation. We did complete the audit in conformance with government auditing standards, so that's an additional level of auditing above and beyond what our professional standards require. It's what the Office of Management and Budget requires us to do. So the first bullet on the left side is highlighting that management is responsible for the financial statements themselves and selecting the accounting policies, and it's our job to ensure that those policies are acceptable with the standards that we have to follow. The city did implement a new accounting standard called GASB 87, leases. That was a significant change for the city. I want to also remind you that the city's financial statements present the hospital as a fund of the city's financial statements. That's a big fund. And the hospital also receives a separate audit with separate auditors. That information gets wrapped in. It's called a group audit. And also their pension plan also gets wrapped in the city's financial statement. The hospital also implemented the standard, a big standard for the hospital to implement as well. So all of that information was appropriately incorporated into the financial statements of the hospital and then, of course, with the city as well. On the next page, just reminding you all that there are estimates included in the financial statements, so it's not like everything that's audited shows up on a bank statement. There are other things that are estimated, and we review those estimates and make sure they're acceptable in relation to the financial statements as a whole. On the right side, we comment on any disclosures that we believe are more significant than the other disclosures in the financial statement. So the deposits and investments that the city has, the lease receivable and revenue that's really has a lot to do with the Harris contract for the city, And then the retirement systems and pension plans, those three footnotes in particular are significant. During the course of our audit, we did make some changes to the trial balance that was presented to us. We call those corrected misstatements. And then we also have uncorrected misstatements. Those are things that we identify that could be changed, but management says don't need to be changed, and we agree because of their materiality. And on the next page, we have a grid that shows these uncorrected misstatements. They mean a lot to accountants and auditors, but just a high level, you had 3 items that could have been presented differently than the way they're presented currently. And again, management determined them to be immaterial, and we agreed with their determination. We do also have a separate management letter. That's on the right side, just a point of the management letter, and I want to talk through that briefly with you. That's a requirement of performing the audit under government auditing standards, and there were 3 items that we pointed out in that management letter. The first is a segregation of duties comment, which is consistent with prior years. Just the size of the accounting staff here results in some segregation of duties. Opportunities to involve other people in the process could eliminate some of those, but that's a management decision of how things get organized and the cost versus the benefit of involving other people in those processes. The second item that we had is that the city, again, because of its accounting staff and its size, really does rely heavily on its auditors to implement the more complicated technical standards that are required to be implemented to present the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. So an example would be the leases standard this year. So that's something just we're noting that the city does require the auditor's involvement in that process. And then thirdly, the city did have some adjustments related to accounts payable. So there is a requirement that things get accrued at the end of the year if a transaction took place, but then is paid much later after the end of the year. They need to go back and be presented as if they're part of the end of the year. So we did identify some adjustments in that process. So those 3 items are included in the management letter for management to consider any kind of changes going forward. This next page highlights that there's a lot in the financial statements. So we audit the basic financial statements, which were in the middle, basically, of a big packet, basically from your balance sheet all the way through your footnotes. But there's information before that. We call that the introductory section. And then there's information at the end. We call that the statistical section. It provides a lot of additional information, again, to users of the financial statements. What we're auditing are those basic financial statements. We do read that other information. And that really concludes the comments that I wanted to highlight from the audit. We do have presented to you in this packet the representation from management that we'll get hopefully tomorrow that will conclude the audit. And then we also have the list of journal entries, which is useful to make sure that we're all on the same page and that the next year's auditors have the information they need to make sure the financial statements are rolling forward appropriately for the next year. So that concludes my prepared remarks for you. I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you have about the audit this year.
Thank you for your report. Do we have any questions?
Just one quick question. And first, I know doing audits take a lot of effort, so thank you to you and the accounting team. But so there are a fairly large number of journal entries and CJEs. I assume those are client journal entries.
Yes.
Is that like a timing issue on when information is available, or kind of what's generally leading to all those?
Yeah, I would say some of it could be perhaps answered by Nick, but yes, that ideally, in a perfect state, there's nothing to report there. So you're I guess, in my opinion, that observation is appropriate. We'd like to see that go down to 0. I do think it's a timing issue for the client journal entries at some level, and then the adjusting journal entries are those that lead to our management letter comment of you're relying on us to make some of these adjustments at the end of the year. So, Nick, did you have any comments you wanted to say?
I think the big one that I think we can, and we're working on kind of controlling it, are capital entries. So our fiscal year ends September 30th. We strive to get them at least an initial trial balance by the beginning of December. And usually by that point, we still have some capital items from invoices that maybe come in after the 30th that we work through, accrue back, and make sure that we've got everything lined up. We've had really good conversations with our management team to try and shrink that timeline a little bit more so that we can get those in. And then, there's all the stuff that we see kind of afterwards that, okay, this needs to be accrued, or just getting those worked out. But that's been a point of emphasis that we've had the last couple of years, and we're starting to see it shrink a little bit more.
Okay, that sounds good. And it is my first year, seeing this. So I was just curious, but it sounds like that's being worked on. So good to hear.
Thank you.
Any further questions? As I see none, thank you so much for your report. I know a lot of work goes into this, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item 12, 9-month service contract with KCATA, fixed route and flex service. Bill number 7759, ordinance number 9556.
Good evening, Council. Happy to see you again this evening. With me, I also have Bruce Beatty, which is our Chief Financial Officer, Tyler Means, you met last time, our Mobility Officer, and AJ Ferris, who is our Planning and Scheduling Manager. We were presenting a contract for 9 months, which will take us to the end of 2023. The service cost is $691,635, and then after federal preventive maintenance, ARP funding, Missouri State funding, and then adding on a capital cost, the total local share is $335,341.50.
Councilman Smith.
Okay, I have a handful of questions for you. The first thing that jumps right off the page is that the price has gone up pretty substantially. If we're looking at annualized year over year, between 2022, we paid annualized now, top line before all the federal funding, $673,000. This year it is annualized now, $866,000. That's the 3-month plus the 9-month. It's almost a $200,000 increase. What's driving such a big jump?
So we've had significant increases in maintenance costs, fuel costs, driver salaries have increased. Overall, our cost to increase, our cost to provide service has increased. And additionally, looking through past contracts, we've probably been underbilling a significant portion, and we're trying to correct that now to be more equitable with our community partners, all who provide service. Again, also Bruce Beatty is here as well, who can provide some more detailed responses
Sure.
if you would like.
To add to that, and I appreciate you being here, it looks like the fixed routes and the flex routes, the flex used to be the bulk of our cost. The fixed routes have jumped pretty substantially. In the last meeting you mentioned, sort of as an aside, that we would be asked to support a portion of the fixed route, but there wasn't a lot of detail on that. Can we understand a little bit why our fixed route costs have ballooned in size?
A lot of that's attributed to, over the past years, we lost fare. So that's roughly $15 million a year. So the past 2 years, that's about $30 million in revenue we've lost. A lot of that's been made up in part from the federal side. But eventually those COVID dollars will run out, and we're trying to slowly build our increases in there so that they'll sort of grow at a lot slower, at a much more slower rate in the future. So we don't anticipate having such big jumps in costs moving forward.
So is a lot of it's attributable to zero fare? There's not money coming in to support the I don't know what you call it, the utility of service.
Yes.
Is there any consideration given going back to a fare model?
Right now, that's not in our plan.
Okay.
A lot of our clients sort of dictate whether we have a fare or not.
Okay.
UG, Kansas City being the two largest ones. So that pretty much sets that rate.
Does that bring in federal dollars with the zero fare program, or are these only the ARPA funds that we have left to kind of pull from? I see under the bottom of the line there's some state and federal dollars in addition to the ARPA funds. I'm just trying to guess. I know ARPA funds are going to run out, but
Right.
The rest of that, is that going to be a reliable source of funding for years to come?
That's our plan. We are going out trying to get a lot of additional funds to help support our operations. For example, last year, we received roughly $400,000 from the state total. This year, it's going to be close to $1.8 million, and then that's distributed based on ridership among the various communities. Once the ARPA and the COVID dollars run out, we do plan on getting additional federal dollars to sort of, I don't want to say swap out, but it'll be basically be an offset to that.
Okay, so, yeah, what I'm looking at here is with the top line being 866,000, roughly a third of that is ARPA dollars. If that vanishes and there isn't a replacement, and we're starting to ease in, as you said, starting to grow into this, it looks like a big jump next year for our bottom line, and that's pretty concerning. The other part is, how are we, I don't think we got the full picture of how we're calculating the fixed cost for the constituent communities like North Kansas City, for the 201 and the 238. They run through town, but how is our specific allocation being calculated?
Well, what we do is we look, what we do is we look at the entire route, and the part that's in North Kansas City, we just break out the cost of that. And then a portion of that cost is then attributed to North Kansas City to take care of, to pay for.
So the operating costs of this specifically to North Kansas City?
Yes.
That's the driver salaries, fuel, all that is broken out, and then we pay, you know what the percentage we pay of that is?
It's roughly 24%.
Say that one more time.
Sorry. 24% for the 238 and 13% for the 201.
13% for the 201. I was talking to Councilmember Fitzgerald to get some numbers back and forth. He's very good with numbers. You had looked at what the cost was per mile on some of these routes. It almost feels like there was a calculation mistake somewhere in this, that how expensive it's getting.
I was using some real loose estimates, just kind of napkin math, but I was looking at the 238 and came up with 4 miles of that route is in North Kansas City, and then just, 33 routes a day, run that out for a full year, and, what the costs are being charged, came up with $8.56 a mile. Seemed higher than I would necessarily expect for operations.
Especially if we're only doing.
Again, I'm not familiar with how that works, but
If we're being billed,
I came up with at least
24%, which would make it like something like that.
That amount used to be $5.66 a mile, and that amount has gone up since that last variable.
Okay, and that was our share, was the $5 and change. That was the 20. So the total cost of operation per mile was $5.66. Gotcha. I'm just trying to wrap my head. Okay, so like if Connor, if
Do you mind repeating the year, because he wasn't at the mic?
sorry,
People at home did.
2017 was
Okay.
the estimate being used. So if Councilmember Fitzgerald's numbers, it's napkin math, but it sounds like he's in the ballpark. But that was $8 plus per mile, but we're only paying 24%. So it sounds like that would be like $32, $33 per mile to operate. Something is just, I mean, it's not adding up. And just the big jump in numbers is what's causing me some concern. I understand us as a constituent community needing to pay, a little bit of a share of the fixed routes, but this seems like a lot. I don't know what that works out to, like per rider or per fare that not fare, per person riding in or out of North Kansas City. Do we have those?
I do not have that number per person.
It's starting to get really, really expensive that way. Okay. Let me move to another line of questioning. So there's the part about the missed trips, the 98% operational capacity. Does that factor in? So it's trip completion, I think, is how it's worded in the contract. What happens for late pickups? What if the bus is 20, 30 minutes late? How does that get captured?
So the way we are proposing the measurement is purely a missed trip. So a late run is different than a missed run.
Okay.
And so this is only for runs that are not completed. Oh, the 20, 30 minutes, excuse me.
If it's over 5 minutes late, that's a missed trip. 5
Okay.
minutes is our late window.
Okay.
If we come 20, 30 minutes late, that's just a missed trip for us.
Does that count as a not completed trip?
Correct. I go
Okay.
against that 98%.
Okay, so if they're over five minutes late, that's a missed trip. Okay,
Right.
just making sure. Is that clarified in the contract, or is that just you internally call it a missed trip?
I do not know, but that is a metric we use. Yeah, that's how we measure our self-performance.
I don't know if Mr. Barzee would need to see that in a contract to clarify what counts as a missed trip.
And if it's not, we can easily define that. Yeah, we use an internal metric where once we're over that metric, we consider it a missed trip because obviously something's gone amiss.
Okay. I had one more. Give me a second. So the way it's worded in the contract is a little bit, it's strange to me, but this may be standard contract language, talking about the estimated local share. Item 5 says notwithstanding provisions, the maximum obligation of the community shall be $335,341. And then it goes on to say, the next item, if the total operating loss is reached. So if at some point it would push us over that number, that there's no more obligation to provide services, we would need to amend the contract. That's a little odd to me. If we're agreeing on a number, it seems like that's our maximum obligation, but if that money runs out, then services are terminated until we amend.
So that's standard language. That's in all of our community contracts. I've never personally experienced a situation where we've overran the operating cost and ceased service. But those 4, 5, and 6, those are almost identical in all of our community contracts and who we operate with. But again, I've never experienced a situation where we've ceased service because we've maxed out over the operating loss.
Councilman Clark?
I mean, now I'm going backwards to the ridership when you said you don't have the numbers, but you did mention earlier that like federal funding is distributed based off of ridership. So how do you keep track of those numbers?
Ridership is collected at the system level, right? So we as the KCATA collect ridership based on the regional level, and then the allocations come in federally, and we break those allocations out to the community partners. So we know what goes to the City of Independence, Unified Government, Wyandotte County, as well as what goes to Johnson County. So that's how that ridership is all added up. So at the system level, we collected, we reported to the NTD. They say, all right, next year, here's your allocation. This past year, we got $23 million in 5307. So a question that Councilmember Smith had asked earlier was about the federal money that's listed in there. That does not really change. It's formulated based on ridership and your population. Actually, ridership has gone up, our population's gone up. We got $1 million more this year than we got the previous year. Ideally, we'd probably see something similar to that. Our ridership's 16 to 30% above what it was last year. So ideally, we're looking at more money coming in. And that's the federal money that helps support and cover against that local share as we see these ARPA funds drain down to help support and reduce the cost to our local partners.
You had said that you were looking at equitable fees, that was something that you were changing and looking at equitable fees. Being that we're paying a portion of the stops that are here in North Kansas City, how do you determine what is equitable between fee sharing?
A lot of that comes back to ridership, and that's the basis for a lot of how things are distributed is based on the ridership. When we're allocating all the federal dollars, the ARPA funds and things like that, based on the amount that we receive, the percentage of that is then allocated to the various jurisdictions based on that.
So for example, we've got 24% on 208 and 13% on 201, which is a very different percentage of fees. What goes into that change?
I'm sorry, what was your question again?
We pay 24% for the 208. That was, sorry, 238, and 13% of the 201, which are very different percentages. I was just wondering if you could explain how you get to those percentages.
In that instance, we take the collective ridership. It's not a percent based on that particular sense. It's if your ridership as a whole, and we'll just say as an example, is 15% of all the ridership along that route, that's how much of the federal dollars you'll receive.
Councilman Saper?
You've used the term, many of you have used the term ridership. Would you define what you mean by ridership?
That would be the number of boardings in
Alighting.
and the what?
It's just boardings as ridership. Lightings is for the, so just boardings.
Okay.
Simply boardings, so people
So you
getting on
mean
the bus.
boardings from stops in North Kansas City?
Well,
Is that what you're telling me?
we're looking at two. You're looking at all the boardings, so all along the route in Kansas City and North Kansas City and in Gladstone. And there's also the portion of which that is just boardings in North Kansas City.
So you do have you do know actually the boardings in North Kansas City, and we're being apportioned that way? Or are you apportioning it some other way?
Are we doing the miles? Or is it boardings? So the way this is being apportioned is based on 50% miles that run through here. The city of Kansas City, Missouri picks up the other half of the miles. And the other apportionment is the hours served in here. So as a bus drives through here, if it takes a bus an hour to go through there, 10 minutes to go through here, your 1/6 of that hour is attributed to North Kansas City. That's just an example, but that's the only time you pay for is as the bus as it is through North Kansas City from boundary to boundary.
Would it be possible for you to make that information available to us?
Yeah, we can do that.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
I think Mr. Safer's question addressed one of my questions, but I'm still kind of struggling with the numbers. I was looking at this for all of 2021, the fixed route made up 15% of our total costs. In 2022, the total costs have gone up and the fixed routes are now making up 77% of that. That's just a huge jump, and I'm not quite understanding how we're getting from A to B in a one-year span.
Part of that is our service level has increased over the past couple of years. We're trying to get back to pre-COVID levels in terms of the level of service that's being provided. So your headway is decreasing on some of those routes. So there are more routes occurring, or more trips occurring, I should say.
Like more buses per day, is that what you're saying?
Councilman Smith?
Sorry, one more question. I guess one comment, one question, but just asking what Jesse mentioned. I'd like to see the late trips defined in this contract before executing it if possible. And then it was mentioned that the Iris service might be a potential option at some point for the flex route in the future. Would you all have any timeline on when that might be ready for North Kansas City to be able to enter it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at July 1 to make that available to communities outside of Kansas City, Missouri. So we're hoping to reach out to you all again to see about your interest as we look at the future of Flex and moving potentially that service towards this, as well as for Gladstone and other communities around the Northland, as well as through the rest of the Kansas City area.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilman Smith?
Okay. First off, I hope I'm not coming off as attacking anybody. I appreciate the position you're in, Bruce, right? Yeah, getting your arms around everything. It's a big bite to take. I appreciate the data that is clearly living in your head. You know the stuff cold. What I struggle with is it seems like there's a fairly complex formula to bill and then another one to get the federal funding allocated. So it sounds like federal and state funding are based off ridership, trips boarded in North Kansas City, if what I'm hearing. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, ridership, level of service, so the amount of platform miles, platform hours, as well as just overall population as well. So there's how the feds calculate their mutant math, no idea.
So that's the federal side. Yeah. The state side you mentioned went from like 400,000 to 1.8 million year over year. Congrats on jumping that up. That's great. What formula is used for that?
Some of it was actually, if it's from Missouri, there was no formula.
Oh, that
was
makes
us
sense.
Lobbying to get more money from them.
All right.
We just put a larger presence in Jeff City, and we're able to get more money allocated towards transportation.
Excellent. And then I guess the billing side of it, where what we're being billed for is a different type of formula. It's more based on the miles and hours rather than the ridership. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. So if we have the ridership data, it seems, I don't know if fair is the word, to base it more on the actual ridership than the miles and hours spent, because the buses drive through North Kansas City along the route. It's just part of the route. Whether somebody gets on or not, they're going to be driving back and forth. And even if we said no more tomorrow and we're going to cancel it, they still have to drive through North Kansas City. It seems more equitable for the cities to pay for the rides that are being taken in and out of the city rather than the miles and time. I'm struggling, similar to Councilman Fitzgerald, to understand the huge jump. And I know we're being billed a little differently. We're being asked to contribute a larger share to the fixed routes. But it's becoming, I can't guess right now because I don't know the ridership data, but it seems the cost per ride has just gone through the roof. But I would need to see the actual ridership to know. It's such a big change year over year that I'm just not prepared to, like, I don't have the data to say, like, this is a good idea, like, this is a fair amount. And then with the backside of, I don't fully understand, I might have to talk to Councilor Barzee about it, the language about it's an estimate, the local share estimate. Let me pull that back up. The number 5 in the contract about it being an estimate, and then number 6 about the losses. If the operating loss hits that number, services would terminate. That may be standard, but I don't understand it well enough. And not to harp on things, but this contract was sent to staff on Thursday. We've had the weekend to kind of try to digest it, and now tonight we can ask some questions, and then we have to vote. It's very quick for such a big dollar. So I'm just not prepared tonight to make a decisive vote.
Councilman Saper?
Yeah, I'm really concerned that you may be pricing yourselves out of our market. And other cities I know have not contracted with the KCATA in whole or part and have found other vendors for services. And I would hate to see that happen here. I've always supported the KCATA service here, and I continue to, but these pretty vast increases are pretty mind-boggling, frankly. And I am worried that you may have priced yourselves out of our market.
Any further questions? We could table it. What would happen?
Contract expires the 31st, right? So what happens if we don't approve a contract tonight? What are we looking at, Bruce? Or anyone who can answer that?
We can either move to a month-to-month based off current rates in order to keep our doors open. If we break contract completely and there is no service agreement, we are pretty much forced by the city of Kansas City, Missouri, that we'll have to run closed door through the city of Kansas City, Missouri without stopping. So there'll be no stop at the service.
Closed door through North Kansas City?
Yeah.
Okay. So the buses would just keep
Absolutely.
going.
There'd be no connection to the city.
Hey, your pen's squeaking real loud. As of April 1st, there would be closed doors through the city.
Yes, sir.
This is where I didn't want to get. Last time we came up for contract, I said I didn't want to keep kicking the can forward, and that was the feel we had. And we're up against it again. If we don't approve the contract tonight, then the people who rely on the bus services on April 1st don't have a way to get from A to B. And that's a really tough spot to be in. I need more information to understand and to feel good about these rates being fair to the city, to the taxpayers of North Kansas City. But tabling it means we kill service, and that is a really tough spot to be in. I don't prefer the month-to-month option either, because we're just moving in at this rate, and then that becomes the new normal. We did it for the 3 months, which was more than I wanted to do. So I'm really torn. I would be open to other people's thoughts, but my thought is to table this and have a discussion at the next meeting. And if that means we lose what is the next meeting? April 5th? That would be 4 or 5 days of service. I don't know if you can run open door for 5 days until we get data back and can have a full discussion and vote.
We have a board meeting tomorrow. We can raise that question to see if the board approves.
Okay. I would move to table pending. I mean, we can't pend it. I would move to table and ask you to do that with your board to run until April 5th at least, so that we can have the next discussion.
I have a question about ridership data, because we've asked for ridership data the last several times we've met, and the answer is always yes, that we can get ridership data. But we don't ever actually get ridership data.
We actually have it publicly available in our rightkc.org dashboard. You should be able to click on North Kansas City and see boardings within the city limits as
Okay.
well, platform miles, platform hours. So it should all be publicly available.
Okay, and then the only other comment that I had is I don't think we can do closed door for 4 days. We have too many people that rely on it. My vote would be, or my suggestion would be to go month to month and keep those doors open, but it's up for discussion. I saw some hands over here. Councilman Clark?
I mean, I guess my mind goes everywhere, and I'm like, we could honestly hire 4 employees and buy 4 vehicles that would just drive people to these other bus stops to meet them there for the 4 miles in the city. I mean, that's how insane this starts to become. And so I wonder, have we ever weighed out? Like, has Uber ever presented to us, or has Lyft, or any services like that?
We did.
We did.
Yeah. When we were
Did it look astronomical?
We were
It wasn't
reconsidering the flex.
I mean, but I think now things have shifted significantly financially, so I don't know what that looks like.
It wasn't, if I
Vouchers
recall correctly, it wasn't the cost at the time that we discussed. It was the manpower that you needed to make it happen, and the laws and rules around safety for people that needed special considerations.
Sure.
Which will always be an issue.
Yes, true.
I'm at a loss.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Just say, I wouldn't want to risk ending bus service for the people that, in North Kansas City that use that. So I'd be in favor of the 1-month extension while we get those numbers and try to understand what we're looking at here, given the time constraints when this was presented.
Councilman Roberts?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I mean, in all honesty, it's been 2 years I've been on council, and this has never been resolved in 2 years. And it won't be resolved probably when I finish my council tenure in a week. But yeah, I guess we have to go month to month. But I will just say it's frustrating. It predates some of you even existing there. That we've just been consistently kicking the can, and the lack of data, the lack of full data. Like, it's just like, give us too much stuff. I'd rather have ungodly amounts of data than every time it seems like we're like, well, I wish we had this number that we're probably going to ask. I'm sure other communities have asked for these things. So I would just recommend maybe sending us too much stuff that we might not even need to look at, just so we could, I mean, the amount of questions that we're hearing from everybody, it's every time. So just send us all the things you could possibly think of. We're going to kick it down 1 more month because we can't close the door on people. But yeah, let's do it.
Councilman Smith?
The other option, and it's a 4-letter word at this point, is a special meeting before the beginning of next month to get the data in, and then it would be a single item vote. I don't know if that's in anybody's wheelhouse rather than going month to month. But I'm not prepared to approve even a month-long contract at this point. 3 months was supposed to get us there. 1 month probably won't. I want to know that there's a good contract on the table to get the data in.
Kim, I see you looking at your calendar, I believe.
I am looking at my calendar. We do have a forum, the NKC Candidate Forum, already scheduled in this room on March 30th, as well as court on March 27th, so those days would not be available. And I don't know how fast our teammates here would be able to turn the decisive information.
Well, the kicker is this, even to go month to month, I'm going to have to call a special session of our board as well. Because by Missouri law, I have to believe notice to put anything before them.
So we can't, if we voted for that tonight, it wouldn't be a guarantee either way.
Nope. They could, and they could turn it down. That's the other part. So that's a concession. What's on our agenda tomorrow is to approve this contract, pending that you guys approve it. If you do not approve it, then it would be pulled from our agenda, informing them of what occurred here tonight, giving them the option of holding a special session to come with terms based on what you guys input on what you're saying. And if that is the case to move month to month, we can always bring that before them, hopefully in a special session before the end of the month, allowing you the opportunity to make a decision. But calendars are calendars as well. We're at March 21st, so it'll be 22nd tomorrow. Probably would take at least a 3-day notice. We're looking until next week, getting real tight next week to get it done.
So what I'm hearing is we need a special session on your end and on our end to get it done before the 1st. Would you be able to put it before your board tomorrow to run doors open through the 5th, or is that going to require a special session?
That's going to require a special session. That's what we were just kind of consulting on, is that we will actually have to call it because that's not what the agenda item is.
Gotcha.
Yep.
any and
So,
all of it requires.
yeah, anything short of voting on it as is requires a special session on your end, correct?
Correct.
So Kim, since we will already have many of the players here on the candidate forum, would it be a possibility to have a special session prior to that?
So the forum begins at 6.
Mhm.
We would have to do it probably, this needs to be vacated by 6 because we do have the high school students who are coming in to actually do that forum.
Mhm.
I don't know if the city council would be able to get here 4:30,
Or 5?
I mean,
5?
5 should work.
But the question is, I don't think you'd have anything to consider because we would need a revised contract for your consideration by the 30th, and I'm unsure if that's possible.
That would have to come out of their special session.
Correct. Correct. I mean, pretty much what you guys have on your council agenda right now is their contract to us for consideration.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is it's this contract or nothing, and tonight it's not. It's not this contract, at least for me.
I'm sorry, I'm in thought. Councilman Clark.
Is there any consideration to get us to month of Iris? What was that, July, June, July? July 1st? I mean, we're obviously all in favor of public transportation. Like, nobody's against that part. I think we're all grappling with the idea of how is this sustainable over time. Even if you were to ask that, what's that, 5 months? I don't know. You tell me, Connor. Do math. 3, 4, 5 till July?
3 months.
4 months.
3 months and 11 days.
Well, but I thought we back pay for something, like we're sort of paying for March now, like in this next contract. I forget how it works. So it's like a 3-month consideration would get us to Iris potentially, and that's the pay-per-use or something like that. It's just a whole different system, but we don't even have the numbers for that. I think the frustrating part has been we've always requested these ridership numbers so we could kind of disseminate and do the math, and every time it's like we have it, but we don't get it from you, and that's kind of been an issue for us to weigh this out.
Again, the ridership numbers are available on the public dashboard. You can go into your region and click on it and should be able to click in on North Kansas City. It's your ridership, go to another page, it's your platform miles, go to another page, to your platform hours. So you can see the consumption for this community.
The other question was when they mentioned, have you put in if there's a loss of ride or whatever, not complete or missed trip, having that language in there, would that require a special meeting?
No, that's just an amendment to this. That's done through procurement.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
So we can go to the dashboard, which I think some of us are doing right now, but that still leaves the formula for how it's charged. Like, we can look at ridership and platform hours and miles and all that, but the exact how we're being charged is still, it's kind of a formula that, is that public anywhere? Is that somewhere written down in the contract, how all of that translates into 671,000?
The cost per mile, the cost per hour, that conceptual breakdown of cost?
And yes, cost per mile, cost per, how our number is being
calculated,
churned out, yeah.
Yeah. Bruce, you can provide that? We can provide that, yeah.
And when you say, like, I mean, you can't obviously provide it immediately
I don't know if
for
he's,
us to digest.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing it on his phone, but he has it on a laptop because he's able to calculate it, so we can pull that up.
Because I could take the dashboard and pair it with that and see, like, it still feels like there's some sort of math error in here because the numbers are so drastically different. And like, that's where I'm hanging up. Like, I have to be able to look into the inside of the contract.
You're being pressured from two sides, right? You used to get our fares that we collected. And the fare money we got, we actually contributed this contract, the one in Gladstone, the one in Raytown, to actually pay down the services to make the services more affordable. But since we no longer have fare, costs have gone up. We also, to bring drivers back after COVID, we threw over $8 million at our drivers in order to make sure we're able to operate service and recruit drivers in order to maintain a full fleet. And that's where you're seeing those pressures. 100% increase in parts is one part, and the other part is fuel has gone up 25%. So conceptually, we're being pressured from the fact that we have no revenue coming in, and we're seeing this massive growth in cost. Now, we know that those costs, those big cost structures, you're never going to see an $8 million thing to the union again. That one's taken care of. The other challenge, though, is fuel. As we move to CNG, more and more to CNG, you're seeing that fuel cost come down, but it's still high. It's still higher than we like it to be. Parts are finally catching up. Now we're running into a supply chain issue, and that's the other big issue. But that's where we're having to compete and actually fight against other agencies for those parts. But that's where you're seeing those costs being so high, but it's not a long-term problem. It's a short-term problem.
So the 8 million to the drivers, is that factored into the cost now, but we'll see that go down over time? We'll see, or is that driver salaries are now that much higher?
That's now driver salaries.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
So it won't continue to balloon, but like that's.
Correct.
I understand that.
Yep.
Just can't do it.
So we currently have a motion on the table without a second. Yes, Kim.
So I'm doing some ugly math. Large warnings all over the place here. So, Councilmember Clark, you had mentioned, there is a desire to maybe talk about and learn about IRIS. So, would we be able to, and I'm looking at my friends over at KCATA, no idea if what I'm proposing would work, but to amend the contract in front of you to 4 months. So take that 691, 635 divided by 9 times 4. 4-month contract gets us to July 1st. The total amount of the contract would be $307,392. That's the top line. No idea if this governing body approves an amended contract, can you make a floor substitution to your meeting tomorrow for your board's consideration?
Never done it before, but I imagine they would accept it.
I'm trying to find a middle ground for us without going the full length of the contract and getting us to allow the doors to remain open and to have consideration of the IRIS program mid-year.
Could we possibly do quick math for 5 months, just because I know July 1st is the plan, but it would be nice to have a little bit of a cushion in case July 1st didn't.
And if we do that, can we use the current rate we're paying and not the significantly higher rate that is in the next contract?
So the straight line math of the math that was presented, a 5-month contract would be $384,240. That would be a 5-month contract. Again, I'm straight line mathing here. When you take 691, 635 divided by 9, that's 76,848. Times that by as many months as you would like the contract to be presented to you.
I have a suggestion. I don't know if this is going to work, and Mr. Barzy, I'm going to put you on the spot. I apologize, but would this contract be essentially severable to the point we could approve it, and then hopefully if IRIS gets done, back out of it at some point before the full term? Okay. That may have been a bad idea. It's just a thought, so.
I would move to approve an amended agenda that included 5 months at, Kim?
$76,848 per month. Again, that's the top number. I'm sorry to give you guys some on-the-fly math here.
Adding the definition.
So the 5 minutes late, I think, is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
That's considered a missed or an incomplete trip per the 98%. Kim, what was the number you calculated one more time?
So for a 5-month contract, it would be $384,240, and what that is taking the top number in the contract, dividing it by 9, so you get $76,848, timesing it by 5, which is $384,240.
Okay, I'm also looking at the 3-month contract that we're currently under. The monthly cost is drastically lower, so if we did this rate for the next 5 months, we would be at $290,895 versus $380 and change. And I'm not sure what you mentioned when you said go month to month. You said at current rates or at proposed rates?
It's going to be at the new rate. It'd be at the proposed rate is what my CFO's saying.
At the new, okay, yeah. Don't want to put you out on a limb there.
Budget man's saying that we're going the new rate.
Yeah, listen to Budget Man. Okay, one more top tier question. There's $290,000 in ARPA funds allocated to this that are to keep the cost from feeling out of sorts. How was that number picked? The the 290,000 for ARPA?
What we have is a certain amount of dollars that are left in those funds that we've made available for the next year. And then we take a portion of that to allocate to each of the jurisdictions.
Okay. How is that portion, I mean, how do we land on 290?
I'm trying to remember right off the cuff.
Well, I look at it, and again, not trying to draw too many conclusions, but I look at our budget authority was roughly what we ended up with. And so taking the top line minus the ARPA, that could be the plug figure to get us to what our public budget figure was, and then we could back into the rest of the numbers up the chain. Was it looked at what was in our budget to fill that gap?
Not totally, no. I'm trying to remember how that, because it was basically a function of what your total contract was to what we were allocating for ARPA. So we'll say if that was 10%, you got 10% of that amount for your, to go against what you had to spend. So if it was 20 million, and I can't think of the number right off the cuff, and it was 10% of that, you would get 10% of that 20 million would go toward funding your budget. But I think your budget is more along
Our budget
like
was
2% of what we have, just under 2%.
I'm looking at what we had, like, we're doing a budget amendment here. We had 481,000 total for the year, minus the first contract, leaving us 370 or so, and the number is 335. So it leaves us just a little bit in our budget authority to approve this. And so the 290 from ARPA seems like a kind of a plug figure to say, well, it's in our budget, we may as well. I don't know, I'm struggling really hard to find out, or to figure out how I can vote in favor with so much that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to approve the amended 5 months at $384,240.
Oh, hang on, I'm going to give you a bit of a script, that way we can keep this clean for the clerks.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on 1 minute.
Include the language about 5 minutes late, yeah.
While Kim's working on the math, AJ's over here saying he's going to break down ridership data and any other data you want, just in specific, just a spreadsheet. We can send to Kim, so it can be for dispersion.
Okay.
So if there's other data, please let her know so that we can collect it for you and get it to you tomorrow.
The formula that's being used would be super helpful.
Okay. Math formula and ridership.
Got it, okay. So move to amend the contract to end July 31st, 2023 at 307,392 and add language about 5 minutes is a missed ride to section 12.
Second.
Clarifying question, that 307 number, that's different than the one you called out earlier.
It is. I was going over what the end of contract, it's actually a 3-month contract. I was mistaken when I said 4 months. I was counting the months, not the 30-day increments.
Right.
So the amount of money that I gave to Chair Tull at the moment is the correct dollar value that we quickly, on the back of the envelope here, just did.
So April, May, June, July, that's 4.
It's actually 3, and that's what they were.
So our contracts expire at the end of a month. So a 3-month contract would take us to June 31st or 30th. And then the new contract would start, assuming there's a new contract, would start July 1st. Or we can do 4 months, which would take us to July 31st with a new proposed contract starting August 1st.
Right, so we've got language here that says ending July 31st, but with a 3-month number.
think that was the 4-month number? 'Cause
307 is a 3-month number or 4-month number?
307 is a 4-month contract.
Okay, good deal.
Okay, so we have a first and second. All in favor?
No.
Yes.
All opposed?
Oh, no. Sorry.
Motion carries. Do you call roll? Did you need to call roll for that?
This is a first reading, right? This is an ordinance.
Yeah, it is. You're up, Amy.
So how do we do a first reading with amendments? We just kind of,
I know, but he wants to know with the amendment, how do we do it? I just,
yeah, so this
we'll
is,
do it off of this motion, what this motion says.
okay, this was a first reading with the amendment.
With the amended, with the language. So, hold on. Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tull.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
No.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 6 to 1. An ordinance adopting and approving a contract by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority for public transportation services within the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that Bill number 7759 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9556.
Call roll?
I need a second.
Second.
Now
Okay.
call roll.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tull.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Nope.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving a contract by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority for public transportation services within the City of North Kansas City, Missouri. Number 13. Eating and alcohol consumption on sidewalks, public streets, and city properties, regulatory amendments. Bill number 7758, ordinance number 9555.
Shoo.
All right.
You ready to speak?
Good evening, council members. This ordinance in front of you is a text amendment to our municipal code, chapter 4.30, which currently is the ordinance for sidewalk eating and alcohol consumption. We have hosted a city council work session back in February, on February 21st, and with the directions have been provided by city council, the proposed text amendment language is included in the memo and the ordinance draft. There are a few amendments to the existing chapter. We're going to expand and allowing eating and alcohol consumption, not only just on sidewalks, but also public streets and city properties, as we have discussed. And we're also amending some regulations and the application process. We're eliminating the temporary parklets, and the effective date is anticipated to be April the 1st to allow staff enough time to establish and create the new registration forms and process. With that, I'm open to any questions you have.
First reading?
Councilman Saper?
This is in regard to the amount of insurance coverage required under what, 430.040 H&I?
Yes, we have an increased insurance requirement.
Yes, it's increasing, but the limits seem somewhat low because I'm concerned that with drinking going on in front of these establishments and maybe elsewhere, if it's they have permission to do it on the street in some ways or in other public spaces, I'm concerned that there would be some kind of increased liability for the city if someone from one of those establishments goes out driving and has a serious accident causing maybe loss of life. The cost to the city might be quite horrendous. Maybe Mr. Barzee can respond to that increased liability.
Well, as you may recall, that was, when we first discussed this, my first question was, are we covered by our insurance? And I've been told that our insurance is aware of this, our liability insurance carrier for the city, and that we do have coverage on something like this. So I don't know what else to tell. There's always liability on just about everything, as you well know. But I'm guessing we're taking it about as good as we can, taking care of it. Now, if you want to look at it some other way, we can certainly do that.
I'm not specifically referring to the city's liability, but by the vendors, the people who have these permits. They have to provide a certificate of insurance. Is that correct?
That's correct. They have to provide insurance
But
proof.
the amounts seemed low.
We're
I think
open
it's,
for discussion.
for food, it's 1 million, and for food and beverage, it's 2 million. Is that correct?
No, it's $1 million for sidewalk dining or alcohol consumption, and for $2 million is for public street and city property. So this is not distinguished food or alcohol.
Okay,
It's depend-
but
yeah.
it's
It's
the
distinguishing
location.
the location. That's correct.
But somehow, apart from the city's liability, their liability seems to be maybe too low. With the certificate of insurance, maybe those amounts should be increased, maybe doubled.
I would say that these are numbers that we're going to need to keep track of, because as the years roll forward, these amounts will probably need to be looked at to increase.
Do you have your hand up? Any further questions or comments? We have a first reading and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No.
An ordinance amending Chapter 4.30 sidewalk eating and alcohol consumption licenses of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri by A, expanding applicability of eating and alcohol consumption from sidewalks only to sidewalks, public streets, and city properties. B, modifying sections 4.30.010, 4.30.020, 4.30.030, 4.30.040, 4.30.066, and 4.30.070, 4.30.080, and C, repealing section 4.30.085, temporary parklet license.
I move that Bill 7758 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9555.
Second.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember Tull?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
I guess I can't get away with saying ditto, right? An ordinance amending Chapter 4.30 sidewalk eating and alcohol consumption licenses of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri by A, expanding applicability of eating and alcohol consumption from sidewalks only to sidewalks, public streets, and city properties, and B, modifying sections 4.30.010, 4.30.020, 4.30.030, 4.30.040, 4.30.066, 4.30.070, that was 060, sorry. 4.30.060, 4.30.070, 4.30.080, and repealing section 4.30.085, temporary parklet licenses. Okay, item 14, license agreement for camera on building at 1501 Burlington, bill number 7757, ordinance number 9954.
Chief Freeman?
Good evening, council. Hope this is the easiest thing you have to consider tonight. We currently operate one of our city camera networks on one of the Miller properties at 1600 Swift. When the city built the parking lot, it included new cameras specifically for that parking lot, so there's not a need for that camera there anymore. So we look for another alternative place that we don't have good coverage at right now, and Burlington is one of those places. So we approached the Miller family and about their building at 1501 Burlington, about being able to place one of our cameras on the roof there. They're agreeable to it. This is a license agreement that I think it rescinds the old license agreement and creates this new license agreement to place the camera on their building. We have 2 other similar public-private partnerships in this realm, one with Regal and one with, what used to be NT Realty. So happy to answer any questions.
I have 6 questions. Just kidding. First reading.
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No.
An ordinance adopting and approving a license agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and Store Safe Mini Warehouses regarding placement of city equipment on roof of property generally located at 1501 Burlington in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that bill number 7757 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9954.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember Tull?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving a license agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and Store Safe Mini Warehouses regarding placement of city equipment on roof of property generally located at 1501 Burlington in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri. Number 15, approving accounts due and payable by the city through March 17th, 2023. Bill number 7760, ordinance number 9557.
First reading.
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through March 17th, 2023.
I move that bill number 7760 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9557.
Second.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember Tull?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through March 17th, 2023.
And that brings us to staff comments.
I'd like to call on the Public Works Director, Anthony Sands.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted tonight to bring clarification to an item on the Armour Road Complete Streets project that is being wrapped up here. So I guess on social media, there were some questions about the bike boxes at Iron and Armour. So it was discovered during construction in the design that those are not going to function as originally intended. So it was actually, like I said, it was discovered during construction, communicated with the contractor, just basically because of the skew of the Armour and Iron intersection, they end up not aligning where they would in a normal kind of perpendicular intersection. So we had planned to remove those. This was communicated to the contractor, communicated to the subcontractor, and somehow was still painted. So those will actually be blacked out here over the next couple days. This should have been today, but it rains, probably going to rain tomorrow. So as soon as we can, those will disappear. So again, just wanted to clarify that. Happy to answer any questions that come up about that, but just wanted to bring that up.
I just have a few more items. I kind of mentioned it earlier that we are hosting an NKC candidate forum on Thursday, March 30th, here in these chambers at 6 p.m. We have invited everybody that is on the ballot to come. The North Kansas City debate students will actually be the ones hosting as well as asking the questions. We will be live streaming that and recording it on the city's YouTube channel for future viewing. It's the first time we've ever done it. We do appreciate the school district for their help in coordinating and asking the questions. Speaking of the election, that is on April 4th, hoping that everybody turns out on that day. And as a result of the election day, the next city council meeting will be Wednesday, April 5th. And that's all that we have tonight.
Yeah, comments are at the beginning of the meeting. We are ready for councilman comments. We're starting with Councilman Roberts.
No comments.
Councilman Clark?
Great. Happy Women's History Month. It's great to see you as Mayor Pro Temp, Lisa Toll, or Mayor Pro Temp Toll. And it really suits you, that seat. EIC is still looking for filling seats. I think I've talked to Connor and Saper. I do want to give a shout out to Tabitha, who showed up at the last EIC to let us know that some people in the community are apprehensive because they're like, I may not be woke enough to join the EIC. That could be further from the truth. Please step forward and just kind of be a community member to join the team with the EIC. There is going to be out of council chambers meeting that'll happen April 13th, hoping to meet at either a coffee shop or another in the town location so everybody can kind of meet EIC members and kind of see what they're all about. That'll be Thursday, April 13th, and that's it for me.
Councilman Stokes?
I just have one comment. I just wanted to give my mom a shout out. She flew in from Idaho to see me sit on the city council.
Yay! Councilman Saper?
Well, a shout out to our tree planting program. They're appearing all over the city in many different places, and I know there's been some confusion about some of the trees that have been put on 21st, what I've termed a tree desert in North Kansas City, and to assure people that the trees that are being put there are not going to be the large trees that you see in other parts of the city. They're going to be appropriate to the space, the very small space available for planting, as well as taking into account the overhead power lines. Those will not be an issue. But what will be an issue is the removal of a tree desert in North Kansas City. Again, thank you.
Councilman Smith?
Okay. So trees are looking great. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks to Chris Cooper for being super responsive on some questions that came up. And thanks for the clarification on the bike boxes. I know that's been a fun topic to address. I also want to, I'm not going to try to guess particularly, but Dr. Jeff came out to discuss some items. I've been out to meet at the location. I know there's some parking concerns cropping up around the Oxbow apartments. So just asking staff to keep an eye on what's going on there, making sure that the signs get up for the public parking lot, and that if we notice some significant parking from residents in the area, in the street, or in the public lot, that was not the intention of the arrangement we made. And if that begins to happen, we're going to need to address it. So I just want to make sure that that is brought to light. And also, if you haven't met him, Dr. Jeff is a wonderful guy. He does some great vision work. He did not pay me to say this, but he's helped me a number of times. So go check out the Jeff LaFurlow Vision Institute. There you go.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Just a big shout out to Nick and everybody in the finance department involved with the audit. Those take up a lot of time on top of regular day-to-day duties. So just I know that takes a lot. Thank you.
I want to say hi to Mayor DeLong, who I know is watching, and I hope you approve of the meeting. And thank you to my family that came in person and my family that's watching. You give yourself a shout out, Megan. She drove 5 minutes. And my family that's watching online. So thank you. We have number 19.
Item 19, consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the acting city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute Section 610.0212.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember Toll?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
So just as a reminder, there will be no new business. The feed won't cut off. When we come back, you won't miss anything, and we will adjourn. So no new business is happening after this point.